There we go.
Yeah,
All
that
right.
took about 10 minutes too long, but we got there eventually.
All right. Well, typically I just make a slight introduction and we'll go off to the races. I'll get a little bit about your background, kind of you know, starting off where you grew up, what you were interested in, how you got into
Sure.
what you got into, and the catalyst for uh making the change. So, the trust trap, which I'm excited about
That's a
because
good plan.
I uh yeah, I have my own reasons. I'll tell you in a moment.
Sure.
All
Yeah,
right,
no problem. No problem.
let's do this. To another episode of the Men of the House podcast. And today we got Clay Moffat, and he is the author of The Trust Trap. And I'm excited for this one because, um, as many of you know, if you've listened to my story, I've often been torn between people pleasing, pleasing others, and doing what I want to do. And sometimes this can create self trust issues because you're used to doing what other people want you to do. And therefore, I'll end up questioning, am I doing the right thing? Is this really me? Or is it someone else? And so I think that, yeah, self trust, I think, takes a hit when you're a people pleaser and you're used to kind of you do things for your parents, whether it's going to college or whatever. And then when it comes time to do your own thing, you're like, man, is this really me? Or is it someone else? So yeah. So how's it going today?
Going really good. It's uh it's been an interesting couple of weeks. I just got back from Indonesia recently, went trekking in the jungle, so that was really good. Got covered
Awesome.
in leeches, had to get rid of them. But for the most part, everything else is really, really good.
That's awesome, man. Um, Indonesia jungle, was it like a holiday? Was it something you did for kind of to do something hard, adventurous, or what's kind of the purpose behind trekking through the jungles of Indonesia?
Got fun to do. So
Yeah?
go see some nature. It's great that you can go see animals in a zoo, and that's nice that my son can see them. But wildlife is supposed to be wild, and seeing them in the wild, yeah, it takes some effort, but the efforts to me, it's not really the reason behind it. It's more, just going and seeing things where they actually belong and how they live.
Yeah. Very, very good point. Um, yeah, versus the zoo. There's something about being out in the elements, what it does for the soul, what it does for the mind. Here in the States, I know, like if you live in the city and you go hiking or somewhere like out in Colorado, you you just automatically notice the quality of the air difference when you get out, you know?
Yep,
It just seems cleaner, much more pure. And so, yeah, it's great to get away from all the noise and light pollution and kind of dip into nature and see what they have to offer in terms of healing, um, which is what I would do it more for now. My walks are
yep,
more healing and mental reconciliation, but yeah, when you're young and it depends. Sometimes we do things just for the adventure, but I feel like now a lot of my exercise is that time where I'm able to kind of get that mental grasp on things and figure out what direction I'm going to go. But speaking of directions, let's talk about how you got here. Where Start at the beginning. Where did you grow up and kind of what was life like?
life was typical average Joe, really. There's nothing fancy, there's nothing crazy. Came from working class immigrants in Australia, Perth, Australia. They had a very different adulthood to what a standard adulthood would be. They came over with nothing, that started at the bottom after having somewhat successful careers in Africa. And it was an interesting place. There was, growing up outside, going playing at the parks, playing at the ovals, being a juvenile delinquent, getting in trouble at school, and getting in trouble with my mates. A lot of times we got in trouble when we weren't actually doing anything wrong. And then when we were doing stupid things, there was no one around to catch us. So it was interesting to say the least. I remember one time I was driving with my buddy Mark, and he was driving his mum's car, and the cops pulled us over because there was a bunch of young kids in a car that looked like young kids in the car. And for whatever reason, they just wanted to pull us over. And they pulled him over, got him out of the car. Then the other cop came, knocked on the passenger door, which is where I was, says, "You need to get out of the car." I'm like, "Why?" So, "Because I asked you to." I'm like, "What have I done wrong?" Like, "I don't need to get out of the car. I'm a passenger in the vehicle." "No, you need to get out of the car," and starts this whole thing. Then eventually get out of the car, and then he asked me my name. So I give him my name. He's like, "Oh, you related to such and such?" "No." "Oh, well, you better not be." I'm like, what is your problem, man?" Like, it was just like this thing. I already had a disdain for authority, so these sort of incidents didn't really help it very much. Uh, yeah, I left school at 17, joined the Navy, which was a really stupid move. It ended up being a smart move at the same time, but
What was stupid about it?
when
I joined the Navy at 17 too. I graduated high school at 16 and I went in the Navy at 17.
when you've got such a disdain for authority,
Yeah.
going and joining a hierarchical system that imposes authority due to rank, where you have to respect a rank and not a person,
Yep.
isn't a good idea for someone who has ideas that respect is earned and not just automatically given.
Yeah.
And the idea in the military is that you respect the rank. And while I get that in a perfect world, I mean, if you look at it, this is possibly going to upset a few people. The the structure and system of a military is kind of communist in a way. Everyone at this rank gets the same. Everyone at this rank gets the same. And
Yeah.
they're supposed to be all be treated the same. But
All you had to
in
do was
reality,
survive. You didn't
right.
necessarily I found with like some people, it wasn't that they actually excelled to promote. They just were there.
No, man, the inverse, Richard, the inverse. There were some people, I swear to God, and I would even possibly argue that I became one of those people because they just wanted to get rid of me. They wanted to, like, they didn't want me around. So you eventually get to a point where you've been hanging around for so long, or you're completely inept that people just don't want you as their problem anymore. So they give you a great performance review. And you went from this to this, like, "Oh, he's showing such improvement. Let's promote him." And so then they promote you and you become someone else's problem. So there were people that were getting promoted that shouldn't really have gotten promoted.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, I've worked for some people that I didn't really agree with or see eye to eye with, and I was, the typical arrogant, young, also insecure, but posturing and had all this false bravado around me. And I was very outspoken. I'm quite outspoken these days, but I also relinquished a lot of the "I know everything" kind of
Yeah.
attitude
Yeah.
and realized that I know pretty much nothing about nothing. And so from that point of view, I just don't share my opinions because it's just an opinion. And it's
Yeah.
like assholes, everyone's got one, doesn't mean you need to see it or hear it. So, you know,
Yeah.
uh
So what'd you do in the Navy?
I was weapons tech. So, for
How
a
was
lot of
that?
people,
Did you enjoy it? Was it
no, it was
um
boring.
boring? Did it require a lot of
Yeah.
schooling or
Yeah, we did a fair bit of training. The most interesting time I had in the military was when I went to Iraq in 2006 and we were operational.
hmm
And then I was doing boarding ops for the 7 month deployment that we were up there. And that was the most interesting time that I had in the Navy. I had a problem with alcohol before I even joined the military. At 13, and this is what I'm saying, I had a run-of-the-mill childhood. Like, I wasn't abused, wasn't bashed, wasn't raped, wasn't neglected. None of these things that would typically form a traumatic childhood. But somehow, man, somehow I managed to just write myself off completely with alcohol at multiple stages along the way. Back when I joined the Navy, there was a massive drinking culture. I can't speak for today. I've got friends that are still in the Navy now, but I can't speak for today. And it caused some bigger issues because it was massively exacerbated because everyone else there's got massive drinking problems. And,
Yeah, it's kind of the
you know,
norm. But
yeah,
when did you how did you get introduced to it at 13?
uh,
Was it
I
a
was,
family member or was it like you and your mates?
no. So it was just me and my friends who were drinking. This particular instance, when I got hospitalized, I found out some more details about it. I actually need to apologize to my mate's mum, which I don't think I ever did.
Mhm.
Um, I went away with them for Easter break and I went camping with them. And he has two older brothers. And one of his oldest brother was 18 at the time when bought us alcohol. And me being me, doing things in excess, I went and bought a bottle of vodka and a second bottle of vodka, and I managed to scull one. Then I started downing another. And from what information I had received not too long ago now, meaning in the last 3 weeks, I found out that I was found by my friend's mum, passed out face down on the beach in my own vomit. And all
Oh.
my friends had left the beach and come back to the campsite. So they all left me down there, having no idea what was going on. And then she found me like that. So she picked me up, put me in a car, had to drive me for an hour and a half to get to the closest hospital. And fortunately, or unfortunately, depending on who you are in the world, uh, the alcohol limit wasn't that bad that I needed a blood transfusion. But had it been like one or two drinks more, I would have. And they didn't have my blood types, would have been dead.
Oh.
So, there's been like a couple of close shaves. At 18, on my first Christmas leave in the Navy, I came back to Perth. I went out with a friend of mine at his work Christmas party. The story that I got told was that there was a big fight, and I was either involved in it or I tried to break it up. And in the process of doing so, was thrown off a balcony, smashed through the railing, fell 12 and a half feet headfirst on the concrete, and
Oh.
still have the dent in my skull, which is, another thing. It's interesting. But again, like it's all to do with my own internal stuff. Like I don't blame the Navy for it. The stupid thing I did was I hid it from the Navy. I never told anyone about it. I was kind of ashamed of it. I didn't want to get kicked out of the Navy. Like I'm going to make this thing work. So
Well, how
I
did
ended up getting,
when you fell off the balcony,
mm,
did that get how did you explain that away to the Navy?
well,
And
I
how
was
did
on
you
4 weeks leave when it happened.
Oh, okay.
So
And the other thing I was
it
going to
was the
ask
first
was
day of my leave too. First day of my leave.
how did you go through a career or however many years you did without getting any alcohol related offenses? Or did you and hide them from the Navy?
No, so I got the first trip that we went, first deployment we went up to Christmas Island, where basically that's the focal point for a lot of illegal immigrants. They land on Christmas Island, they get refugee status, et cetera, et cetera. So we got up there, catch the boat, stop them. And before we went to Christmas Island, we went and stopped in Jakarta in Indonesia. And I was on duty. And as you would well know, you do not drink when you're on duty. I
Correct?
did, like a
Oh.
moron. Yeah. And I didn't get completely paralytic, but I shouldn't have drunk in the first place, right? And it was on me. And my section leader, who was the same rank as me, he was like acting section leader at that point in time, found out about it the next day and came down and asked me about it. And I told him, he said, "Well, I'm not happy with you. You're going to go do all this stuff again. Like, you're gone." Well, wouldn't you know it? Within about 45 minutes to an hour, I'm fronting the CEO, the CEO. I'm like, "Oh, yeah, that was kept in house. Okay." And I'm getting like the Spanish Inquisition. Now, my initial response to that was they've betrayed my trust, which effectively they had. The victim side of it was that me being such a young moron at the time, completely looked past the fact that I'd already betrayed theirs by
Yeah.
drinking on duty, right? And so I was like, oh, woe was me. Like they betrayed me. They screwed me over. Um, it worked in my favor because there was a certain person, I'm not going to get anyone in trouble. There was a certain person that was on duty that if they had been found out that they were a party to me drinking, they would have been in a hell of a lot more trouble than me.
Ah.
And so it was in their best interest to make sure that no one else found out. My duty for that day was a cafe party. So basically, I had to go and clean the scullery and make sure that everything was clean. And I had to clean out all the alcohol cans from people that were drinking.
Mm.
So I actually had an alibi that was iron because I'm like, yeah, of course people saw me with alcohol cans. Like, what do you expect? And yeah, of course my stuff smelled like alcohol because I was cleaning up all the alcohol. So I just went in and turned around and when I got put into the coxswain's office, like, yep, nope, it wasn't me. Like, what, mate? Yep. Well, such and such said that you told him. I said, well, such and such is an idiot and you can't believe what he says. And he's like, well, he says it. Well, and I'm telling you, it didn't happen. So you can go and believe whoever you want to do, but it didn't happen. And so I bullshitted my way out of that. And the next time something happened was when I got arrested for being drunk in Fremantle. And there was a fight that happened outside a nightclub. A bunch of guys that I walked past as I was exiting the nightclub. Apparently, I bumped into one of them, said sorry, they weren't having any of it, and followed me outside and started pushing and shoving, and then a fight broke out. And yeah, one thing led to another, and I ended up getting chased by the police because I was running away because there was like four guys beating me up. So I was like, I'm not hanging around. I can't beat four people at once. That's not going to
Yeah.
happen. And so I bolted, got arrested by the cops for uh, disturbing the peace and having a fight, and also for running away from the police. But they couldn't really charge me for running away from the police because I was running away from the four guys, and
Right.
the police are telling me to stop. And I'm like, I'm not stopping, man. There's four guys chasing me, trying to beat me up. Like, if you got them taken care of, you think I'm stopping? Like, no, I'm not doing it again. And so anyway, I ended up getting arrested and fronted charges on that. I got the case dismissed and dropped, and me being me, took that as a huge win, and then carried on with the drinking problem. Yeah, man. That basically the how do you say this? The coping mechanism that I had for not dealing with anything was dealing with it through getting drunk and getting smashed and not dealing with anything, just numbing it and putting it over and putting it over. I didn't even know that I had something to work through, to be honest. Like I said, like I didn't have any traumatic experiences really in my
Right.
childhood. The thing that I can put it down to is basically absenteeism. When my dad was working 20 hours a day in hotels, running hotels, trying to make money, get the family survived. I don't blame my dad for it. I've got no ill feelings towards him. But psychologically speaking, it's the only thing that comes up that could possibly try and explain why I was just such a moron for all those years. Like I just can't find anything. There's no massive triggering, sensitizing event. There's no massive trauma. There's just nothing, you know? It's just so funny to me. I've worked with a lot of coaches. I've seen some therapists. I didn't really enjoy therapy. It was kind of boring. I wasn't making progress. So then I went to see a hypnotist. Like I've seen and done a lot of work, and there's never been anything that stood out to anyone that I've worked with that have said, yeah, like this makes sense. This is potentially like what started a pattern here or what's going on here. Nothing. So it was an interesting place to be. But eventually this whole victimhood came full circle. I missed out on promotions when I was in the Navy. I missed out on promotions when I left the Navy and I was working offshore as a subsea engineer. And they were, once I went offshore, they were significant promotions. Some promotions were 40 grand, another was 100 grand a year. So it
Wow.
was a significant promotion, right? And eventually, after many, many years, Richard, you have to take a check of yourself, right? And I was like, okay, the only common denominator here is you, man. Like, what is going on? Like, you can't keep blaming the world. You can't keep blaming everyone. That hasn't really worked for us. We've tried it for almost 30 years now, but maybe we should try something different. And so what I tried differently was learning how to persuade and influence people. So I wanted to learn like these magic phrases or these certain things. Like, like everyone gets into sales and they think there's like this magic script that if you use this script, you're going to sell everyone and you're going to get these clothes. Like that's what people think before you actually know what's going on. And so I was like, well, if I learn this thing, then I'm going to get to this point. If I get to this point, then people are going to do what they say they're going to. And it wasn't true. The truth of it is I wasn't the person that was worthy of being respected, that was worthy of getting the deal held up with someone else. And it was just useless in the end. It was not something that was useful in the way that would allow me to have these really powerful, meaningful relationships with people that people could trust me, that I was reliable, dependable, so I could get these things. And so the more I dove into language patterns and influence and persuasion, the more I started to dive into the hypnosis and NLP and psychology and neuroscience. And the more I started to dive into the reflection that I needed to be the person that people wanted to do things for.
And so
And as
this
I,
was this all just from you kind of taking stock and going, okay, like I missed out on promotions, I missed out on this, it's my drinking, or had you nailed down that it was drinking because you went
nope,
into the language thing? Were you thinking it was like affirmation related, like self-talk related?
no. There was definitely some element of self-talk there, but the self-talk thing didn't really become apparent until I was out of oil and gas and I was really starting to go down like a professional journey into self-development. So from arguably 2010 onwards, I would say I've been into self-development. From
Hmm.
2014, it's been professional. So it's been about 11 years, coming up to 12 years now. And during those first few years, there was no understanding that everything was alcohol related. It was definitely obvious that every major negative turning point in my life had some element of alcohol infused into it.
Right.
So that was part of the issue, and I could see that. But to identify that alcohol was a coping mechanism, to identify that alcohol was part of my life in a way that would prevent me from moving forward, I hadn't made that realization yet. It kind of became apparent, very apparent in about 2013 when I left Australia and I moved to Thailand. And well, technically, I moved to Indonesia first. And I was still pretty intense with my partying and going crazy for the year and a half I lived in Indonesia. And then when I moved to Thailand, it's it's not that it's a different culture. You can still have the same kind of partying culture in Phuket, I promise you. But where I moved and who I moved with, what just reframed everything. I came here for fitness. I came here to enjoy life, and I kind of like left that part behind. And it just came full circle. So there wasn't any realization on that kind of element, but the realization was that my self-talk was horrendous, for lack of a better word. There's probably a better word to describe how brutal it really was. But I was very, very self-deprecating. I didn't even realize how bad it was. The way I used to speak to myself, you wouldn't speak to your worst enemy kind of thing. But for whatever reason, I had learned that this is okay and this is normal. And There was a lot of high expectations, and there was no compassion towards myself, and there was like a very tumultuous
Do you
relationship with
think it comes
myself.
from the military? Because I have the same problem. Like it's a type A personality, graduated high school, you're early, very high performing, whatever, whatever. And so, you go into the military at a young age and attention to detail, perfectionism type things, and the way you're talked to in the military. And then you kind of develop that same kind of self-talk and it just
No, for
continues
me,
on.
it was much earlier. It was definitely much earlier. So my dad had a very interesting childhood. We don't need to go into that. But what I will say is his self-talk is the way he talks to himself is just abominable. And I've seen and I watched that growing up, and I think I learned some of that from him. And then there was just, I don't know, somehow some things kind of glued together. And I also have tendencies for ADD and attentive type.
Mhm.
I was having like really big problems in school. My mum sent me to go see a kinesthesiologist. We did brain gym, which is a bunch of weird exercises, which I never wanted anyone to find out about because there were a bunch of weird exercises and we get called a freak. And, like everyone that's an insecure kid wants to fit in, wants to belong. But I started doing these exercises. I did them covertly. I did them in the toilets before I went back into class, kind of thing. And I went from a D student to an A student within 6 weeks.
Oh, wow.
So it started having a massive effect on my brain and really produced significant results to the point where, like, I forget things. And the common saying when I was growing up is I'd lose my head if it wasn't screwed on because I just forget things. Uh, More recently, in the past 3 or 4 years, I've been very heavily into neurotransmitters and understanding the biology and the chemical processes of how things actually come together. And the pattern that I've been getting repeatedly over time with the levels of neurotransmitters, how my reuptake is excessive. So certain transmitters are low because they're getting absorbed and removed very, very quickly, is somewhat akin to someone that would be classified psychologically as ADD and attentive type. So I misplace things very easily. I leave things lying around all over the time. I forget why I walked into a room, walk back out of the room, come back in and remember, then walk. It's just like this, like internal chaos. And it was very hard for me to maintain habits and patterns. Like I have to fight very hard for the habits that I've got. And so there was like extra struggle there. So going into the biology and things like that, so changing my lifestyle, changing what I'm eating, changing how I'm exercising, changing my routines and setting up structures became a very big part of like how to do things. None of the military necessarily made that easy. I mean, the routine made things easy, knowing what to do, how to do it, knowing that thing made things simple. The hierarchical thing was more of a personality clash than it was to do with that kind
Right.
of thing. But the self-talk, I don't believe came from it. I think it came from having high standards. Like this whole forgetfulness thing. My mum, God bless her cotton socks, she bought me a book when I was yay high that is the title I Just Forgot. And it's about
Hmm.
this little kid who forgets everything, right? And at the end of the book, he ends up remembering things. But I started labeling myself as a forgetful kid. And to the point where I used to just call myself all names under the sun when I forget something. And it would happen all the time, all the time. I go on holidays, I forget this, I forget that. This will be gone, this will be gone. And I just lose like a trail of things as I go on holiday. So I'm buying things and stocking things up. It's only been in the recent years that I've actually started giving myself permission to just, relax and stop beating yourself up about it and just pay more attention. Have checklists of all the stuff you bring. Now, typically speaking, if I've got my routine and I follow my routine, I'm good. But when my routine gets interrupted because I'm rushed or I'm tired, there becomes massive problems and like I just leave a trail of things. Like, yes, I've got everything. I get to the airport. Damn it, I need to go back and get my passport. Damn it, I need to go get another plane. Like there's just things that,
Yeah. So
you could argue are normal, right? But yeah.
what initially prompted you to get into like self-development?
Wanting to influence people. I never wanted to get into self-development at all. I had zero interest in
So you
helping other
just
people.
wanted to influence people.
Yep. And then through the process of doing that, the more I got into learning
And what
language
what
patterns
was the
and
core
learning that
reason for wanting to influence people?
to get what I wanted. Because I was sick of people not keeping their word. They'd say, yes, we're going to do this for you. And then, like, you are next in line to get promoted. Like, your
Oh yeah.
test scores are
Okay.
great. Like, you've got great work ethic. You're doing these things. And then it comes to the thing, and then they don't follow through.
Well, the funny thing is you got to make the big distinction of influencing people versus influencing people within a corporation or government that you work for, because they're a lot harder to influence for sure when it
Yeah.
comes to getting them to do the right thing for you. But yeah, so that is so interesting that just wanting to have some influence kind of got you into that. So you mentioned um, that you needed to become the person that people wanted to keep their word for.
Hmm.
What, um, how did you start to become that? How and where did you start? Like with habits or routine or qualities and characteristics within your personality?
That's an interesting question. I didn't really start with habits, routines, or characteristics, not per se. I would say that came in to it was a side project that I didn't even realize was going on at the time. It happened accidentally. So
What was one
the
of the
first
changes that happened? Yeah, tell me that.
the
One of,
first real shift that happened was going and doing the first NLP course that I ever did. And I went through some unconscious processes, right?
yeah.
Where I wasn't consciously doing something. I had someone talking to me and taking me through a process, and I felt intensely different through the process, releasing something. I was bawling my eyes out over something, which I was like, what? My hands are coming together. Why am I crying? This makes no sense. And like my hands were just coming together by themselves. Like I was hypnotized at the time. I didn't realize it was hypnosis at this point in time. I just thought it was, oh, it's NLP, whatever. Anyway, it was hypnosis. And I had been hypnotized and I was going through this process and I finished the training and I came back and other people were telling me that I seemed calmer, I seemed different, I seemed more grounded. And I did this training and people were like, oh, is there anything that you could show me? And I'm like, yeah, okay. And so I went and started doing some of the things I learned on other people. They felt really good. And then the process happened for me was I started realizing if I could help people get what they wanted, they'd likely want to help me through reciprocity or anything else. So if I started focusing more on helping other people and less about just focusing on helping myself, then I'd probably get what I wanted anyway. So it started to create this mechanism, this chain of, okay, well, how do I help people get what they want?
Hmm. Wow. And what was so you started off kind of with NLP and
Mhm.
you're helping. What were kind of some of the things that what were people coming to you with? Like what did they want? When you say help people get what they wanted, what were they wanting? Were they possessions? Were they qualities in their life? Was it peace and calm? What was it?
To be fair, I think everything roots to the same thing at some level, no matter how extravagant or how simple it is. Everyone will always revert to a basic form of some kind of psychological safety, whether it's more confidence, whether it's less anxiety, whether it's to get rid of anger, whether it's to get rid of feelings of shame and guilt and emotional hurt, whether it's to attract more money, whether it's to get a job promotion, whether it's to lose weight. the underlying principle of that is some kind of psychological safety that is missing from their life that they perceive when they have this thing, they're going to have this level of safety that they don't have right now. But the tangible things that most people come to for me for at that point in time, a lot of it was around weight control
Mm-hmm.
and losing weight and getting to like a more ideal weight because they were told they'd die if they didn't. There were, because I was in Phuket at the time, there were a lot of fighters that wanted to get their mental game to the best.
Yeah.
Why do I want to get that? Because then they're going to win their fights. If they win their fights, they make more money. They get, so, like everything kind of reorients itself around to like, how do I put myself into a position where I can create a more safe
Abundance.
environment for me mentally? Yeah. You could say abundance.
But the psychological safety kind of makes more sense to me when you say it. Like, it the word choice was interesting there because all the things you said, yeah, they weigh on the psyche. The Whether it's as an insecurity, a lack of something, um, but yeah, the wording around that, shame, weight, all that it kind of chips away somewhat at identity, who you're identifying as, and the alignment with the identity of what you're identifying as and what's true. In terms of, if you say you're in shape or skinny, that that comparison, that's where the safety is because you feel more comfortable. You feel more like who you are, um,
Definitely.
and that confidence. So initially, kind of like coming from that physical training type mindset background, and then doing some NLP, working with fighters and stuff, and um, yeah, because I can remember I took martial arts as a young person. I think I started at 8 or 9 years old, and I can remember we went to, was it Pattaya Beach,
Hmm.
and I was stationed in Japan, and so I can remember going there, and um, whoever we had a squadron party at a bar, but in this bar was a kickboxing rink, and
Hmm.
they just did Muay Thai all day, and I sat there, man. Well, because I was from a small town of like 400 people and martial arts. This was the 80s and it was like Bruce Lee and all that. So being able to go there at 17, 18 years old and you're seeing that, you're like, and this was the 90s. I was like, man, this was awesome. Um, but man, yeah, I can remember sitting there for 14 hours just watching kickboxing all day, all night, and every day. Um, but yeah. So what else when does it take turns outside of, let's say, some of the physical things? What else are you helping people with behaviors or, things that aren't necessarily related to weight and or mindset as it relates to fighting and stuff like that?
So in, what was it, 2016, 2017, I just got divorced from my wife. I was with a good friend of mine. He had a ticket to an event that was being hosted here in Phuket by a marketer who's now a good friend of mine. And he said, look, your skills are really good. Where you're getting your clients from? So I was getting my clients from retreats
Mm-hmm.
here in Phuket. So I wouldn't do any marketing per se. I'd go and I'd speak at the retreat. Some people would like what I had to say. They'd end up working with me as clients. Others wouldn't, so they wouldn't. But I didn't do any ads online. I didn't do any products, nothing like that. I just put it out there. And he said, look, you're getting in front of the wrong people. If you get in front of the right people, it's going to make all the difference and you'll do really well because you're good at what you do. I'm like, okay, sure, no worries. So I went to this event, courtesy of him, and there's a bunch of entrepreneurs. They were all online, and they has go around the room and say what you did. And the big thing at that moment for me was weight control and stop smoking. And said, okay, so like, what's your offer? I said, well, I help people quit smoking, money back guarantee, $400, and you're done for life. And I'm like, what? $400? You should be charging at least 2 grand for that. There's no way you should charge 400. Like, these are all online marketers, right? So like, hey, jack up the price. You should be doing this. Go crazy. And it became very apparent to me that there was a huge need for mindset in the entrepreneurial space. And typically speaking, mo most entrepreneurs have more money than fighters, just how it happens to be.
Yeah.
And so it financially it made more sense. And the theory behind getting people there as an athlete or as an entrepreneur is exactly the same because they are a self-governing body, really. If an athlete doesn't perform, they lose their contract. If an entrepreneur doesn't perform, their business goes under. So it is on them, it's on their shoulders. And yeah, an athlete's going to have coaches and support and watch their diet. Entrepreneurs are going to have similar things and support structures as well, but ultimately the buck stops with them and they got to get going and they got to deliver and they got to move forward, depending on the size of the company. Then I was a part of a mastermind and uh, one of the other guys in the mastermind put me in touch with his business partner who needed some help, and he ran a roofing restoration company in just outside of Denver in Castle Rock.
Hmm.
And I started working with him and got insane results with him. So when we started working together, there was a lot of mindset stuff and behavioral stuff. I had to do a lot of covert stuff with him because it was very open. Like he wanted to come and change, but he was very resistant to someone else's ideas. So I had to do a lot of planting and a lot of covert stuff to get him across the line, which we did in the end. And he went from completely destroying his sales team and building like a very, very dangerous culture that could have led him to go to jail into becoming a business that went from a $500,000 loss one year to a $9 million profit the following,
Wow.
just through changing the structures and the systems, because roofing can be a very profitable business. And he worked hard, but he made a lot of silly mistakes and stupid errors. And so we cleaned it up and turned it around, and things were like firing for him. And he's still a very good friend today. So there was that kind of shift that happened. Then when he got those shifts, I got introduced to people that he knew, and then referral kind of happened, and a lot of things took off. And I kind of went the wrong way with it. I pushed and I was like, you know what? I'm doing amazing. I'm making good money. I've got great clients. I want to help more people. Let me go and build an app. And I had no business building an app. None whatsoever. Like
Hmm.
literally none. I tanked that massively. It cost me well over $500,000, closer to $250,000. At the
Mm.
same time, simultaneously, it destroyed my coaching practice because I was putting so much effort into developing this app that I wasn't putting the effort I needed into focus on my business. And so they both crashed and burned. So I simultaneously destroyed the thing that was making money and torched all the money at the same time, trying to build something that never, like, just fizzled out and never eventuated into anything. So I had to
Man.
rebuild and start again. But, I still work in the same capacity. I still work on mindset and beliefs and habits. The question that you asked was like, how do I do it? The reason I told that part of the story was because how I do it now is insanely different to how I did it back then. Back then, it was like, okay, I know this technique with NLP, so I was kind of like a mechanic,
Right.
right? Someone would show up, I'm like, okay, like you've got this thing, so I'm going to use this thing that's going to fix that, right? I'm like, I'll go through the toolbook. And the really good mechanics, the ones that have been at the job, they can just listen to something and they, okay, yeah, I know what's wrong. So we need to go and adjust this. And you're like, but that's got nothing to do with what's going on here. And they go do their thing, and then the car is working. Like, what? Doesn't make any sense. And I've got to a point where I wouldn't say I'm a magician, not by any scope of the word, but I would say I've got to a point where it's now I don't want to use the word intuitive because it's not really intuitive. I've just worked with that many people that I can start to see patterns and the result and the language and the nonverbals that I pay attention to, and that then I then reciprocate and put back to them, help them change in a much faster way. So how I do the change is more of an intuitive process based on a lot of experience, But one of the things that's been a huge thing that's changed is how I start taking stock of their blood work and their neurotransmitter levels to see what's going on inside their brain and inside their body before we actually start doing any kind of mindset work. Because if someone's habit around sleep is horrible, I can be the best hypnotist in the world, and the results they're going to get from hypnosis are going to be a fraction of what they're going to be if they're getting the right amount of sleep. If their hormones are out of whack, again, things are not going to really get there. So the idea is, okay, are we building from the right foundation first? Do we have the biological things going on? Do we have the physiological things happening? Are there basic core habits there? No. Okay, well, you need to get that sorted. And until you got that sorted, we're not doing anything. If that doesn't work for you, go find someone else. And the people that do stay, we get that all sorted. And then it takes care of arguably 80% of the problems that are coming up in their life. And
Mhm.
then we get to like the real core things that need the actual attention. We don't waste time on all the surface level stuff. Oh, this isn't happening. Oh, well, I'm not really performing at work because, well, okay, are you getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night? Like it's common practice now. 5.5, 6 years ago, it wasn't like commonly known that you need this thing and that this is going to be the best reset for your brain to flush out trauma and to have dreams and for your lymphatic system to get rid of all the chemicals in your brain to flush it out and reset for the following day and to regulate your neurotransmitters and to regulate your hormones. Like, there's so many things that sleep does that if it's not being done right, it's not going to really help. And are you addicted to your phone? And are you drinking? I've got no problem with drinking, but is your drinking more of a habitual thing or is it like a social thing? And what are all the things that come in? So we do basically a huge assessment of what's really going on with them at the moment, so we could figure out a starting point. So we're not trying to work on optimizing a house of cards.
Yeah. So you mentioned this kind of big shift in how you did things then versus how you do them now.
Hmm.
And it was essentially done by you lost everything. Um, what did that experience teach you and what went on in that within yourself? What changed within you to come back and choose to approach it differently in this new way?
Well, I think that I need to continually be reminded that I don't know it all. I don't know why. It really sucks. I don't really want to learn the lesson again. I think I've got the lesson now.
Hmm.
But I think that was the main thing. Going and building that up. Yes, I did have ambitious goals, and yes, it was a project, but
You said you mentioned
I
something when you were like everything was going well. And sometimes I feel like whenever we accomplish something, like you complete something, it's like now the real work begins. But also when shit's going well, that might be when you want to fucking pause and take a look because it might just be on the way down.
yeah, there was a few things that happened around the same time. So there were some things that I would argue that were very much out of my control. For example, COVID. So a
Yeah.
lot of the businesses that I was working with, they got hit really hard with COVID. And so therefore they got hit hard. They're like, okay, what you've done for us is amazing. At the same time, like we're losing all our customer base. We can't keep affording to pay for you to work with our team and do these things. So those things were out of my control. And that was in part of why the coaching practice imploded. It wasn't just because I was a moron. I did moronic things. Like, absolutely, I'll take ownership of that. It wasn't completely like a self-contained thing, though. There were extenuating circumstances. So I wasn't really paying attention to how much churn I was having. And I wasn't paying attention to how much churn I was having because I was so focused on the app.
Yeah.
With the app itself, and this is part of the issue that I can get sometimes, I become so focused on attaining a goal that I'll just stick to it no matter what. The reason why I ended up stop developing the app was because I was down to around my last $20,000. And I had, at that point in time, a 3-month-old son and a now partner and a stepdaughter that I need to support financially. Had that not been the case, I probably would have run it into the ground to try and get this thing finished.
Mm.
I tried the first way. There was a bunch of things that happened which will make sense as to why I changed, which I'll get into in a moment. But I tried 3 different ways, and it was on the third way that it started actually turning around and becoming successful, which was the original way that I wanted to do it, but I got talked out of it because I didn't know enough about building apps, and I didn't. That's fair. Had I done that, though, I think I would have actually got a functional app that worked, that produced a good result for the people and didn't wouldn't have torched my reputation. So along the way, there were a lot of signs that things were going south. And I had these mental representations of the people that I was working with. And I was like, no, that's not happening. That would never happen. They wouldn't do that to me. They're a good person. They're this. And they were the subject matter experts of project management for app development, and I was not.
Right.
So if I'm paying someone, I'm paying them for their authority and expertise. So I need to trust that. And that's something that we will all fall for because we delegate and defer to authority. That's just how we are. And that's a human nature type thing that's being conditioned into us to pay
I feel
attention to
like this
authority. And
this ties back to your the beginning of your story of issues with authority. Um,
uh no, not
well,
really. This is a very separate thing.
yeah, I
So
know.
issues with authority was like more hierarchical thing. So like there's a teacher, so you need to do what the teacher tells you. I'm like, I'm not just gonna blindly
Right,
follow someone,
but what
right?
also I'm saying is in that term, we as a society through school and everything else, we're almost conditioned to treat and look at others with authority as like, hey, they're an expert or they're the authority on this, so you should listen. And
We
it made
are.
yeah, and it made me think of that when you said, hey, like they're the authority on project management, app development, and I am not. And,
Hmm.
as little kids, we're like teachers, police officers, everything. We look to them and we auto trust them because they've got some sort of authority or
Yeah,
perceived
that
authority.
exactly. It's definitely perceived. It's hierarchical authority, right? It's not the authority that you would recognize in a tribe,
Right.
right?
As almost like an
And
expert or a patriarchal type, I have your best interest in mind authority, like the
exactly.
the father of a family.
Yep.
Hey, don't touch the
Right.
stove. It's not because I'm an asshole as your father. It's because I don't want you to burn your hand.
Yep. And that's extremely accurate. And at the same time, we've got these systems in play where we've been conditioned before we're even born, like it's in our DNA, that you listen to authority, because if you don't listen to authority, you're going to get kicked out of the tribe. And getting kicked out of the tribe 10,000 years ago, 100,000 years ago, basically meant death. So there's things in our DNA where we just like,
I didn't think it went back that, I didn't think it went that deep. Like I'm aware of the conditioning, but I didn't really even think about the DNA part and tribal part of it, but it makes sense.
well, if you look at the Stanley Milgram experiments, Milgram was a Jew. I'm going to mess it up. He's either from Bronx or from Brooklyn. I don't know if they're the same thing. My geography's not that great. I'm pretty sure they're different. Um, but he did the Milgram experiment where they were basically electrifying people, like
Hmm.
electrocuting people. It was staged, right? But the person who was the unwilling test subject, not knowing they were a part of an experiment, didn't know that it was faked. And over 60% of people went to 400 volts and would have completely killed someone. Over 100% went over a legal voltage. And it didn't matter that they were begging and crying and screaming. The person that was administrating the experiment would just say the experiment requires that you continue, and they would continue going through. And the reason he did that was because he couldn't believe that at the Nuremberg ring trials, people were just saying that I was just following orders. It's like that's not
Yeah.
possible. And his experiment's been replicated, I think, over 18 times with the same or worse results every single time. Like it's hardwired into us to follow authority. And that's just how we go through things. Like we really pay attention to the authority aspect. And if someone looks like an authority, acts like an authority, carries himself like an authority, we are suckers to it, man. And
Mm.
I was a sucker to it as well. And it was a defining moment because that breaking that down and getting trained by some of the mentors that I've been trained by, it became so glaring, obvious in hindsight that like I fell victim to what I'd label as the trust trap, right?
And
It
that's what
became so obvious.
and this is what was the catalyst for you to write it, correct?
The catalyst for me to write it was the fact that I was potentially going to go blind in 3 weeks. That
How
was the
did that come
catalyst to
about?
write it.
So where is
So
this in this story?
this kind of circles back 15 years, but not. 15 years ago, I lost the vision in my left eye. I was at a rave, walking along happily, minding my own business when I'm drunk, surprise, surprise, and the vision just vanishes in my left eye. I go to the optometrist the following day. They rush me to an eye specialist in Perth, and the eye specialist is like, "Oh, fantastic! You're going in for surgery in the next like 48 hours. Try and save your vision." I go in for surgery. I come out, it's even worse. It's just like completely grayed out and filled with gunk. I'm like, I can't see a damn thing. Going for surgery again, come out, I can see perfectly. It's amazing. I'm like, oh, this is fantastic. I'm a vision back. Perfect. Thank you, doc. A couple of months go past. He notices that a cataract. He operates again, removes the lens, puts the artificial one in. I wake up, I can't see. And it's done. It's permanent. There's no reversal of this time. Um, so for the last 15 years, I've been blind in the left eye. And in November last year, I'm driving with my partner and my kid. We're disappearing up into the jungle in Thailand. And I'm driving on the road, and the separators, the lines on the road, about a certain distance out, started veering and disappearing into two. I'm like, doesn't make any sense. I'm wearing my contacts. They're the right prescription. I'm not sure exactly what's going on here. Like everything else is in focus, but things are like starting to create double. I'm like, well, this doesn't make any sense. I didn't bring my glasses, so I thought it was just my contact lenses. Come home, go see the optometrist again. He's like, I think you've got a cataract. And I'm like, okay. So I start the journey. And for the next 3.5 months, I'm going to see optometrists, ophthalmologists all over the country in Thailand to figure out what's going on. And at that time, I got a general consensus that it is cataract at the end of it. And so the only way to fix that is surgery. There's no pill you can take to change it. There's no eye drops you can take. There's no injection, nothing. The only way to fix it at this point in time is through surgery.
Mm.
That surgery was the surgery that caused me to go blind permanently in my left eye. That was the third surgery I had, a routine cataract operation. So when that became the only way out, and considering the last time I went blind, it became acutely aware that it had a possibility of happening again. So if I wanted to ever write a book and get it out, then I need to do it and it need to be done in 3 weeks. And I could have a ghostwriter write it, but it's not me. And I scan things visually. I am a very visual learner. So to try and write a book auditorily or rate a book to someone without having any notes was
Mm.
going to be next to impossible. So I had 3 weeks to write it before the surgery.
And
That's what was the mechanism.
how was that how was that process other than frantic? And where did the yeah, what was the process like, and where did the thoughts come from, and what were you trying to convey in it? And what were you piecing together? Yeah, what was your brain piecing together of, hey, I'd been taken advantage of and I need to get this out. And
So which question do you want me to answer first?
let's
Because
go
you
with
just like
the
unloaded
let's go
five.
with the process of
Okay.
because it sounds like frantic of like, oh shit, 3 weeks, I got to get this done. What was the process like? And then tell me what you were trying to get from your brain to the page to convey.
The process, I wouldn't say it was frantic. It was very, very determined and hyper-focused.
Oh.
So there became a very real level of urgency because
Hmm.
there was, in my mind, a very real chance that this was the only chance I was going to get to write a book. It was the only guaranteed chance, let me put it that way. I wasn't 100% certain that I was going to go blind.
Right.
I also was not 100% certain that I wasn't.
Right.
So because there was not that certainty that everything was going to work out, and we're having this conversation now, so it did work out, so we're clear.
Hmm.
There was this just a very real understanding that like you've got this one shot, man. Don't fuck it up. And so it became this thing that I really need to pay attention to. And it just gave me a sense of focus. It's the stuff that is in the book is stuff that I've been going over and been learning. And the neuroscience that it draws from is stuff that I've been studying on since 2018, 2017. So it's not like it's just this brand new thing. It wasn't like I just created the book out of thin air and like, okay, this is the thing. This is something that's been like quite central to how I approach things, how I approach my personal development, how I approach working with other people,
Hmm.
is to create this frame and have a look at things. And the lessons that I got from building the app became like this was the most impactful thing that I thought that I could offer people, that I could create as a self-contained ecosystem that once written it was done. Like I don't need to host websites. I don't need to host courses. I don't need like it's done. It's on Amazon. You can go buy it. Like it's simple, you know what I mean? And I
Right.
wanted something that wasn't going to require a bunch of work after the surgery because if the surgery went wrong, how am I going to market it? How am I going to do these things? I could not see the the path for doing that.
Right.
Whereas the book, it's out there. Like, yeah, okay, I still can't market it, but the book is there. I've done this thing. It's out there. And I released a very, very imperfect book. There were typos in it. There were pictures that were mislabeled. There were things like it wasn't perfect, but I got it out in time. I'm in the process now of going through and updating it so it's not as archaic. And so, I mean, it's already been refined and all the errors have been moved, but I want to add the details that I'd left out last time and smooth it out and get it done to a standard that is of the standard that I want it to be at.
And what's kind of the general consensus of the book? What's the idea of it? The rundown. What is the trust
So
trap?
the idea is that if you change the way you look at trust, you change the way you look at the world. And when you change the way you look at the world, you also change the way you look at yourself. So the trust trap is a perfect storm of a couple of things that have happened based on the way that our nervous system and our psychology and our language all form this perfect storm that create a mechanism that we don't even know is happening. In marketing, they talk about telling people that it's not their fault, right? You've got to make
Hmm.
sure it's not their fault because if you say it's their fault, no one's going to want to buy. They're going to feel guilty and shamed and they're not interested. So the really cool thing about this is like it's actually not your fault. So I didn't have to make something up. It happens to be like this default way that our brain operates. So if you are interested in evolutionary psychology and interested in how the biology responds to things, and you look at how the mechanisms of our nervous system work, we are not built to thrive. We're not. We're simply not. We are built to survive. We are built to conserve energy. We only expend energy when we think that there is a very high certainty that we are going to get a positive result from that. And so a lot of people say, well, they're lazy, they're this. They're not lazy. They just haven't conditioned or reconditioned themselves to focus on having this positive expectancy and doing it anyway, whether there's a positive expectancy or not, because not doing it means going into a worse position. So we don't spend energy unless we're going to get something out of it. And we don't want to spend energy. So if I can create systems and frameworks that turn things into automatic patterns as quickly as possible, then I'm going to conserve energy. So if we take the idea of trust,
Hmm.
trust is the process of trusting. And trusting in any process is something that is perpetual, right? Processes don't end, they just continue, right? Especially when it comes to relationships. And relationships is the process of relating to someone else. So how do I want to be relating to you right now? How am I going to be relating to you in 5 years' time? How were we relating to each other 5 years ago? This is all a process and it evolves and changes over time. And so trust is the same mechanism. But what our brain does and what language does, it says, oh, Richard is a trustworthy person. That's a snapshot. It creates a mental representation. And that image becomes this process where you now get labeled as familiar, you get labeled as safe. So everything you do now gets filtered through that lens.
Hmm.
Now, as you're going through the process, let's say we start deviating, and there are things that start coming up on my radar, right? And things that start coming up on your radar. Well, Clay said he was going to do this, but he's done that. Richard said he was going to do this, but he's done that. We will go ahead and we'll overrule that and go, no, 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 no. Rich is a good guy. No, Clay's a good guy. No, they'd never do that to us. It's not going to happen to us. We would not do those things. No, not going to be there. And so we start getting these red flags, and red flags are not necessarily bad things, they're just signs to pay attention. Signs that something is different from this mental representation. So you need to ask questions, you need to pay attention. Because as soon as you get put in that trust bracket, the mental shortcut is we stop paying attention so we're not burning energy.
Hmm.
Right? And
Hmm.
so this is where the language comes in. So you are trustworthy. That is a snapshot frozen in time. You're no longer paying to the process. Not only that, we feel safe and familiar with each other. So I don't need to pay attention. So I'm not now burning energy again. So it just becomes like these multiple layers that come up through like these heuristics that we've developed to survive. Because 10,000 years ago, I can't even argue, 300 years ago, right? Our
Hmm.
psychology doesn't develop and evolve that fast. 300 years ago, you couldn't just walk down 7-Eleven and go get snacks of food.
No.
Like you had to work for your food. Even 100 years ago, you had to work for your food. It
Hmm.
wasn't like guaranteed. So it's been in very recent times that we can go, you know what? If I've got some money, I can go get food, especially living in a big city. I can
Right.
go get some food at some point and I'm going to be okay. I can go to the supermarket tomorrow and I can get food. I'm not going to starve to death. So that's a very recent development. However, that wasn't like that. And we used to learn, and memory was encoded due to levels of caloric intake. So remembering where the mango tree is in the jungle was a very easy thing to do and how to find it because the amount of calories that you get from going visiting the mango tree is massive. Whereas going somewhere else, and that's why we kind of get addicted in an evolutionary sense to like these high caloric foods, right? Because they
Hmm.
trigger all these same signals that go through the brain. So the trust trap was the idea that we fall into this trap that has been created by our biology and by our psychology through evolution's sake of thinking that trust is permanent, which it isn't. And second, it's a fluid state. We, by the definition of trust, and my definition of trust is very different to what I would argue is most people's, we trust, and when we say we trust someone, we trust the other person to meet our expectations.
Mm.
I trust other people to always meet their own expectations. And that is why I trust everyone. Not because they're selfish, not because they're a piece of crap, not because they're like a total trash bag. It's because we are all self-serving at the very base level. Every single thing that I've done in my life and every single thing that everyone else has done in their life had a positive benefit for that person, regardless of whether it was an external positive benefit or an internal, where they just felt like a good human being for doing something, right? Giving someone $100 means you're out of $100, but it changes their world. You feel great for it. It might not seem like a smart idea to do, but you feel great, so you got something out of it. I think there was an episode on Friends where Ross and I think it was Lisa were having this argument that there's, or it might have been Joey, that there's no such thing as like a selfless act
Mm.
because you're always going to get something from it. And that's not a bad thing. I don't think you should be ostracized or demonized for doing things that are good for yourself. If they benefit other people, well, brilliant. Like that's a great thing. It's not bad to benefit from things. Like it's a beautiful thing. So this trust trap comes into play because we freeze things, we hold things, and our expectation of trust is based on other people meeting our expectations instead of the reality of it that people are always going to meet their expectations. And the only thing you need to do is check for alignment. Are my expectations moving in the same direction as yours? Is this mutually beneficial for us right now to be having this conversation? I would argue yes,
Yeah.
right? Right now, you thought I might have had something interesting to say. I thought your podcast was a good fit for what I'm trying to put out there, mutually beneficial. If you thought the message that I had was complete garbage, I can trust that you're going to say no,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. 100%. What are the ways that you pay attention? Like you said, the red flags, and you
Hmm.
know, you're like, it doesn't necessarily mean stop. It just means pay attention. Now,
Hmm.
when you're looking at, like, let's say a situation you're looking for alignment, what kind of things are you looking for when you're paying attention? What kind of signs? Because there's different situations. It might be dealing with people and trust in that way, but also it might be related to something trusting yourself.
So you're always dealing with people, even if it's yourself, right?
Mm. Yeah.
Okay. And trusting someone else can never happen until you've learned to trust yourself. Because if you can't learn to trust your own signals and your own indications, then you think you can trust someone else. But realistically, what's your baseline for connecting with being able to trust someone else? So
Mhm.
to take it back a step, it's always looking at multiple things. One is taking snapshots and assessments of where they are on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So, are they making decisions from a need of safety? Like, are they trying to put food on the table? Are they trying to get a roof over their head? What's their incentive for the action that they're showing up as for them? Is that incentive going to be good for me or bad for me? Meaning, if they get what they want, does that then leave me worse off or better off? If it leaves me worse off, then I can trust that their action is most likely not going to be in my favor. And they could say things to get me to do something that is not necessarily evil, but they could say things that would put me in a position that's not going to be as good as what they could be. Whereas if their incentive would also be beneficial to me, then I can trust that there it's going to get. So it's got to do a lot with trying to read people, which then comes into, okay, what's happening with their words? Are their words matching what's happening with their nonverbals and paying attention to their nonverbal behavior? Uh, when I was in the jungle last weekend, I went for a trek by myself the morning we were flying out, and we came across a group of 50 odd long tail macaques. And they're like short little tiny monkeys, right? They're not very big, but they're aggressive little buggers.
Hmm.
And they had completely surrounded us. And they're sitting there and they're like, how would you say, like barking, growling at us.
Hmm.
And if you flinch and you show a sign of fear, then they go and attack, right? So they're testing constantly to see what's happening. I'm extremely grateful that my kids did not come with me on that walk in the morning because they would have been terrified and they probably wouldn't have come out with me in the jungle anymore after that. So it was a good situation to be in there. But it was very, very interesting to watch because there's this posturing being displayed by these monkeys. They're testing. And it was amazing to watch this behavior because the nonverbal in a monkey was very similar to the nonverbal in a male. And it was just fascinating for me just to be able to observe that. But paying attention to nonverbals gives you information of what's happening in the real time. And that through itself can stop you from being pulled into this mental snapshot of, okay, this is a trustworthy person. You're like, okay, what is happening now? What's happening? The language is saying this, the nonverbal is indicating this. There is a
Mismatch.
mismatch. There is something that's not going on. There's no congruence there. So what's really going on? What am I paying attention to? I need to stop. I need to pause. I'm not making any commitments to move forward. So you can start putting things in check. Starting to understand with this whole idea of self-trust really means getting in touch with what's going on at the core, or I would say what's coming up from you. Now, there are signals in the system, and then there's a lot of noise. And if you've been attuned to pay attention to others for people pleasing, that you need to go down the path of people pleasing, then I would suggest that you need to spend some time learning and figuring out what the signals are for yourself. And one of the ways you can do that is to start going through simple processes and going through internal yeses and internal nos. So, for example, I'll tell you about something that one of my mentors taught me. Kenrick is his name. He talked about this internal yes, internal no. And basically, if you were to think of a food that no matter where it was cooked, no matter how it was prepared, you'd be like, I am not eating that, Clay. Get out of here. What's a food that comes to mind?
Eggs.
Okay, perfect. So I want you to imagine that we go out for breakfast, you and I. We're catching up and we're having a good time. And there is a place that does the best eggs in the world. And you look down at the menu and you see all the different kinds of eggs. And that's the only thing on the menu. What is the response that you have internally to that?
Oh,
Right, that's the verbal response. What's physically happening? Do you notice because I saw the response, you kind of like caved in.
yeah,
So right, and you're doing it again now. So would you say it was kind of like a weight that was there? You felt like kind of like a pressure that was there. You kind of felt like you were pushed back from something because you even moved back.
yeah.
Okay, so that is the first indication for you of what an internal no feels like inside yourself.
Hmm. Hmm.
So that is something that is in misalignment with you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, it does.
Right?
I thought it was interesting because you talked about Indonesia and Thailand, and I was in Japan and been to Thailand and Hong Kong and stuff, and um, I was wondering if you get a little extra sensory as it relates to reading nonverbal cues because you're around people who don't necessarily speak the same language. So the
Hmm.
nonverbal cues also factor into the understanding. And I went, I had my 19th birthday in Japan and had so I was in the military early at 17. And so it was like, so my experience of dealing with people who didn't speak the same language was at a much younger age than most people.
Yep.
But that definitely, as you raise a child, if they've had no foreign travel and you're walking around the US and everybody speaks English,
Hmm.
or mostly, or Spanish, but it's like you pay less attention to the nonverbal cues because you don't have to. And it make,
Right.
like you said, it's all about energy, conserving energy. Yeah, I've
There, I would say yes and no. I didn't do it as a byproduct of being here. I did it because it was a conscious thing that I started paying attention to because I found that a lot of people will lie and they'll lie for all sorts of reasons. They're not going to lie because they're trying to screw you over. They're lying because they have some shame about something. They want to conceal something. They're not proud of something. There's so many reasons that people can lie. And it's just catching people lying is not why I got into body language and nonverbals in the first place. It's interesting information. It's good
yeah,
to know, but it's not why I got into it. I got into it because it made me a better communicator by seeing that there was something else going on. It allowed me to see when to press and when to pull back. It allowed me to be more present in the conversation it stopped me from daydreaming and disappearing off with the clouds because I do have a habit of doing that sometimes, right? So there was like a bunch of things that started to happen that started to play in kind of like a symphony together that created this perfect environment for me to go ahead and then start practicing it. Now, happening to live here and not speak the language, I mean, I studied it for 12 months and I did disastrously bad. Uh, though going through that process and having that process was interesting to say the least, and it really helped with paying attention to when I was learning the nonverbals
Hmm.
because I couldn't understand what was happening with the language anyway. So it was a conscious decision. It wasn't something that I would have just picked up.
Yeah. What's been the most interesting part of this journey in the learning? Like what piqued your interest in most as you were learning it was like the NLP, the body language type stuff. What's kind of, because I know it changes. You said you're studying neurotransmitters lately. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, what's kind of been one of the most interesting things maybe you've learned that you had no clue about before you started studying this?
Everything. I have no clue. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be
Well,
smart. I was
yeah,
like, it's literally like everything, it's all kind of led to one another.
right.
The
So it's kind of like
Everything has
almost,
kind of opened another door.
yeah, almost like the path illuminates as you walk it.
Exactly.
A-
100%.
And so
Like I
each,
get to a point and I get so far and I'm like, there's got to be another way that I can make this better. And so I'm like, okay, what's something that I'm not quite seeing that if I could start to see it would help me get better transformation in myself and others. And then, oh, neuroscience. Okay, let's go down neuroscience and start to understand this. Oh, well, what now? Oh, neurotransmitters. Okay, well, let's go down this. And so it just becomes like this weaving path. And okay, I'm no expert in absolutely everything,
hmm
but I've studied things to a sufficient level to have some understanding of how they influence our behavior, our psychology, our nervous system, how that influences our habits, our behaviors, and our interactions with other people. So once I get to, for lack of a better word, a saturation point where I don't feel like I'm really pushing through and breaking boundaries, I'll then pivot to, okay, there's something else that's going to actually open up more doors for me and going to compound and expand this out to be even more impactful.
What's what's one of your favorite stories of somebody that you've helped overcome something?
Well, I didn't help them directly,
Well,
so
or maybe
I'll
you
explain
coach,
in a
maybe
second.
you coached them, and but it had an impact on you as well. That you're like, that's
So
pretty neat, or kind of
I
keeps
got
you kind of going
feedback.
back. Yeah.
I got feedback from a lady who was at a presentation that I did at one of the wellness retreats here in Phuket. And I did this process, which was it was kind of an NLP process, but not necessarily exactly the same. And what happens is you look for a model and you start to model their behavior. And kids are brilliant at doing this, right?
hmm
I get my kids to play this game. Like, okay, like for the next 5 minutes, you're going to pretend you're SpongeBob SquarePants and you're going to be SpongeBob SquarePants and you're going to do everything like him, say everything like him, and they'll go and they'll act it out, right? And I'm trying to give them as much flexibility and like their identity as possible so they've got room to move and grow. Now, this lady was at this presentation. I'm teaching this modeling process, and she took it and she ran with it, and she taught the process to her child who was being bullied at school. And she emailed me. She's like, "Is this something I can do?" And I said, "Absolutely. You just want to make a couple of tweaks to how it go down." So this kid was getting bullied at school, and what ends up happening is the bullies are picking on for being different, for being a loser, for being all this kind of thing, showing a ton of aggression and didn't really know how to deal with it. This kid was like upset. Anyone is when they get bullied and
Yeah.
traumatized. And so this lady starts telling her child this process she learned from this crazy Australian in Thailand, and to just test it out and see what happens. And so basically, this kid was getting bullied. They choose the model. The model is SpongeBob SquarePants, and they go through this process of watching how, like, replaying situation in their mind. And so they're out here as an observer, and they watch the model respond how they think the model would respond. So this bully goes up and starts attacking SpongeBob SquarePants in this process, and SpongeBob SquarePants just goes and gives the bully a hug and goes, "Okay, buddy, I know life's tough. You're going to be fine," and then just walks off. So they watch that happen. Then they put themselves inside the skin of SpongeBob SquarePants and watch themselves go through the motion as SpongeBob SquarePants. They get the same result. Then they put themselves in there, remove SpongeBob SquarePants, and they go through it. And then they step through in first person and they go through it again. Now, this kid goes and does this the very next day when they're bullied at school, and the bully had no idea what to do. Like, none. Like, get away from me, you freak. Pushed him and walked off. Didn't speak to the kid, didn't harass the kid for the next roughly 10 days. Around about 11 days later, comes up to the kid and said, "Look, I'm really sorry. Like, everything's really rough at home. Like, I'm not really sure what's going on. Like, I'm really sorry for treating you that way." Bullying was stopped, like, overnight.
Wow.
That was probably one of the coolest things. Like, I didn't help the child,
Right.
so I'm not going to take that, but that was cool to see someone take that and just run with it and then put it in that regard. Like, I got an email from, like, that was one of the best emails that I've ever got. I've helped guys come back from professional sports careers. I've helped people make millions of dollars. But if you ask me one thing that sticks out, like having a kid just go
Yeah.
ahead and take something and run with it, it's just super cool.
That's like the um yeah, it's that whole why you do it. What's the unexpected thing that's happened, you know, the the silver lining of you taking this chance and going all in on something that you're passionate about or maybe that you thought might work, you know? Um, but out there keeping on and doing it and because yeah, entrepreneurship is hard. It's because it's the unknown, you know? Not like in the military, they always say like some of the selection programs they're difficult because you never know when it's going to end. And I think
Right.
entrepreneurship is similar. Is there's good days, there's bad days, there's ups and downs, and all around you never know. There's no consistency to the matter in the beginning for sure. But I guess
That's fair.
yeah, even longer companies. I mean, even Tesla takes losses, so even it's not consistent
Yep.
there. So it's like on a bigger scale, but yeah. Um, and that's that whole the unknowing part is what gets to people, not knowing how long things are going to last. But that was interesting, the whole SpongeBob thing, like how he would react, go up, give him a hug, and um, do that. How does that relate to adults? What do the adults do with that? What are you trying to get them to overcome when an adult like,
It really depends on the context that they're presenting, right?
but you're
The
just
idea of
acting?
that
Uh-huh.
is to create a new behavior. So what happens with adults and with kids too is that we get stuck into this is who I am, this is how I start to see things. So we filter the world through that way. When you start to put a model into a situation, I mean, there is no SpongeBob SquarePants, right? We both
Right.
know this. It's a fictional character,
Right.
doesn't exist, but inside your mind, there is a representation of that character. And the representation of that character means that character has different beliefs. It means it has a different identity, which means that is the part of you that identifies with SpongeBob SquarePants.
Oh, okay.
So what you're doing is you're giving yourself permission to access that part and perform from that part. That part doesn't have your same limitations. They don't have your same beliefs. They don't have the same governing factors that means that this behavior is okay, this is not okay.
Yeah.
And so it gives you permission to test something else. It gives you permission to not be yourself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, it does. It's kind of like color outside the lines a bit. And it was
Yep.
funny whenever you when you did the representation of like go up and give the what would SpongeBob do? Give him a hug and say, "Hey, I know things are tough." I was like, that was like so perfect SpongeBob because my little cousin used to watch it when he was a kid, and everything was SpongeBob in my mid 20s, and he was like 4 months old, so it was always on. I call him SpongeBob Square Ass, but yeah,
Which is
I
also true.
yeah, but yeah, that was a great representation of it. I thought it was perfect, and
Well, that's not what I said. That's what the kid did,
yeah, yeah, I know.
right? You know, like, and that's they're like, and that's the thing. So another kid could have come up with SpongeBob walking up, going, giving the kid a high five, right?
Yeah.
It's not necessarily this is what SpongeBob would do. It's this is what SpongeBob would give me permission to go and do myself,
Mm.
right? But people don't, and when you take someone through this process and you teach them this, they don't really fall into the idea that, okay, this is like a mental representation of myself, and maybe I'm kind of giving away the power or giving away the secret of it to people that have never done it before. Like, oh, well, now I know it's me, it's not going to work. That's not true. It just worked more effectively. Now you realize it's even part of yourself. But the cool thing is like, they really don't recognize and they don't connect with that. And so it does give them this totally new, totally off base sense of permission to just go and just experience something different. And it allows their brain off the hook to go, well, this is who we are. So this is how we have to behave. This is how we've been conditioned to respond. And that's where the permission comes in. The brain has this zone where it operates, where this is us, this is safe, this is how we show up. And going through a process like that gives the brain permission. Oh, well, this is us, and this is how this part of us shows up, and this is how we can operate. And so you can start to rehearse behaviors and rehearse different scenarios and situations, which is very context dependent, right? You've
Yeah.
set it up for that one context. And once you've got the behavior in that context, you can then start to have it in other contexts if you rehearse it and practice it and create the situation. Because we will start doing behaviors that we rehearse. So if you start, like to me, that's actual thinking. Like you're not remembering, you're going ahead and you're thinking about how you want to solve a problem.
Yeah.
So in this situation, I want to respond like this. Okay, well, how would I respond like that? And so now you're starting to give yourself permission and create the pathways, start to imagine it. And, you know, the old adage in hypnosis is that anything that is vividly imagined, your brain can't tell the difference between reality and what's vividly imagined. The key word there is vividly imagined. Like if you're, you know, doing the bare bones of it and not really putting any effort into it, the brain's not really going to fall into it. And you might have done this other behavior for 30 years.
Yeah.
You've rehearsed this thing one time, and then you go do this thing like, oh, yeah, it didn't work. I'm like, dude, you rehearsed the behavior for 30 years. You've done it one time here.
It
Like, you
makes me
need to
think
get
of
some reps in, you know?
when you hear like that kind of saying of stuck in your old ways or stuck
Hmm.
in, you know, the almost like, and when you said, "Hey, you've been doing something for 30 years that it's on autopilot. Your brain has gotten it to a point where it's as efficient as possible." Even if you're subconsciously doing it,
Right.
unconsciously doing it, you're going to be like, yeah, one time, or even doing it, you know, for 2 months is not going to override 30 years, but it's like you almost, like you have to keep pushing outside, coloring outside the line, almost like kneading dough, stretching your
Yep.
brain. And, you know, they talk about neuroplasticity and, you know, how mushrooms and different things can help rewire the brain. But that when you definitely talk about being efficient, saving energy, it makes sense how your brain could just get stuck and not want to think outside the box or push a little extra to override the negativity of what it is you want. Like, yeah, no wonder things have to be repetitive and a lot. It seems like whether they're affirmations or many things, but yeah, some things are definitely. the wheels are turning over here. Quite enjoyable. And now for
Good.
me, it's like I have to see, because I've always been interested in, I had the big book of brain as a little kid and understanding that we only used a very small percentage and what can we possibly do if we can get out of our own way, out of our own heads. I feel like sometimes that's my problem is I just get stuck in my own head and too many thoughts and sometimes you just need to do, you need action, you just need to start moving. Um,
Yeah, absolutely.
and once that gets going, then sometimes it's better. But well, I appreciate your time with me. Is there anything I didn't ask you that you wish I would have?
Uh, no, no, I had a great conversation. I guess
Awesome,
it's
man.
been real fun.
Well, everyone, the Trust Trap. Make sure you go to Amazon, and I will link that in the show notes. But yeah, thank you for spending your time with me on the other side of the world. And I haven't been to Thailand since the 90s, but tell everybody I said, what's up?
Cheers.
Oh man. But yeah, as I like to say, the call to action is go out and be the person that you would want to meet. Um, if you want authenticity, then show up authentic, right?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Awesome, man.
100%.
Well, I appreciate your time.
Thank you, sir.
All right, man. Peace.